Here we go, Siobhan.
Woo! I see it up there. Oh, we're on. I thought it was counting down, but we're on. We're up.
No, girl, it was 10, 9,
Okay, good.
8, 7.
Yeah. Now
Oh my
it's
God.
23, 24. We're
Yeah,
here.
hell to the yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to Empowered Conversations. Today is, oh my God, I've been nutso, literally jumping out of my skin excited since you and I have been talking about this, like, I don't know, like a week ago, when we decided that we were going to do this together.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you right now that I am just through the roof. Today on Empowered Conversations, my special guest is Siobhan Coates. She's called the fun coach. So she's a life coach, but she's the fun coach, F-U-N, capital, boldface, italicized. And she also, I just love like your energy. I love like what you bring to the table. I love your honesty. And like it's like you're so authentic and you're just transparent. And not mistaking, or should I say no mistaking, and certainly not giving a rat's ass how it is that you show up. And that's authentic. And I identify with that, and I celebrate and have so much respect for people who live their lives not giving a rat's ass what other people think, because live your life caring what other people think of you and always people pleasing, and you're their prisoner.
Oh, for
You know?
sure. For sure. And I didn't always live my life like this.
Right.
I've especially blossomed in the last year. But it's empowering to just finally go, I don't care anymore.
Yes.
I'm a loud talker. I don't care. You got a problem with it. Either tell me I'm talking loud because I don't know, or
Yeah.
live with it. But I'm not walking around in shame and those
No.
characteristics that you just described. And I'm thinking, oh my God, who is this awesome person she's talking about? And it's me. I want to meet this person, but it's me, because for so long, you judge yourself on how other people see you, and you tend to describe yourself as how, not even sometimes as how other people would want to see you, or how you would want to be seen. But wants a gentle, a gentle, soft-spoken person who it does not offend anybody, and who has all the filters in place that will never put her foot in her mouth. Yeah,
Right.
that's not me.
And in our conversation, and I'm seeing people jumping on, and we are only streaming through my personal platform only. So I've been streaming these conversations through my Facebook group and my other page, my business page. But then I get off and I see all these people had joined, but I couldn't see them.
Yeah.
And I couldn't respond to their comments. So from here on out, I'm only streaming to this, and then I'll share.
Yes, please.
So today, as you all may know if you've joined in, I've been advertising this, and so is Siobhan, all freaking week, and we are talking about sex. And the biggest reason in which I think that this is important is because of the shame that, at least I know in my own personal experience, literally my entire life, was taught to feel around sex. And it's like over the past couple of years, it hit me within, like I said, the last year and a half, when I was thinking about doing this podcast. This other girl and I'm not going to say her name because she has since decided to walk away from doing this podcast. But the podcast, Women Unplugged, Raw and Real. And it's literally it starts with the concept of why is there so much shame around the very thing that brings us into existence? And it's like, we wouldn't be here if it were not for sexual union and copulation. And where does the shame come from? And I just so first off, I just want you to share, some of your story of your own experience with this shame, Siobhan.
Oh boy. So, I grew up with a mother who was very, very ashamed of sex, and it was really a taboo subject in our house. I don't even remember ever having a birds and bees conversation. I just always remember my mother saying when I was turning 15, 16 that she was going to put birth control pills in my oatmeal so that I wouldn't get pregnant. The funny thing is, if you had seen me at 15, 16 years old, I had huge hair. My nickname was Ronald McDonald. I was the least attractive girl in school. I had kissed one boy when I was 13 years old. So the idea of me even being promiscuous and even going to first base was hysterical in my head. Yet my mother already had me out there having sex and getting pregnant. So automatically there was a fear and a shame around that. Well, I can't be doing that. And then when I got into more, when I actually did get a boyfriend at 18, it was always, what did he do? What did he do to touch you? What did he do? Did he do this? And did he do that? But my shame actually started way beyond that. Do you want me to just go right into that story?
Absolutely. Whatever you
All right. So everybody, it is 9:06 a.m. in British Columbia and in LA time. So if you haven't got your coffee, grab it because we're going in.
My mouth is getting dry.
I should have got water. I'm just drinking my coffee. So, I belong to a group called Hilarapy, and it's hilarious therapy. And we combine, therapy sessions with humor. And we're always of a nature of preach from your past, preach from trauma that you've already healed from. You're certainly not going to get up and talk about something that's still raw and vulnerable. But this is something that happened to me when I was 11 years old. And in the counseling session in our little breakout rooms, we had to write down shameful or secretive, awful stories from our lives that we've never talked about with anybody, that we've never shared with anybody, that we felt shameful. Now, being in my office at home in my own room, I went to town and I wrote down all these shameful things and some that I've never even written down. And one particular one that I wrote down was orgasming at a bus stop.
Share with us that, Siobhan.
Well, now, I didn't even know what the term orgasm was back then, but I was challenged to a bus stop competition. Me and my friend were at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and it was just he and I, and he challenged me to climb the bus stop sign because we were bored waiting for the bus. So I said, sure. And I wasn't very physically fit, but up I went on the bus stop sign. I'm climbing up, and all of a sudden, like, whoa, like ding, 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 like what the hell was that feeling in my tummy? But it felt really good. So I thought, I don't even know what that is. So I climbed the bus stop sign again. I asked my friend if he had a funny feeling, and I don't think he knew what I was talking about. And I didn't know what it was, but I climbed it again and I had it again. And all I knew was that it was a funny feeling in my tummy, and it felt good.
Right.
And it felt good. I discovered our basement railing going down into our basement at home because, you can't just go climbing public bus stop signs. So I discovered, well, yeah. So I discovered, and again, having no idea what this was. And really free flowing. Oh, yeah, Mom, I'll go downstairs and get some cat food. And on my way down, I'd go up and down the banister a couple of times. What's taking you so long down there, Siobhan? Oh, just looking around. Like I still didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
So one day I was, this is a line from I won't give the direct line from my stand-up set, but my mother was in the basement and our laundry was down there and my sister was doing her stuff, and I came downstairs to do something, and I thought, well, I'll just go up and down the banister a couple times because I'm here. And my mother's doing the laundry and she looks over at me because again, I'm 11 years old, and she says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm making my tummy feel funny. She said, you're making your tummy feel funny? Where does it feel funny exactly? And I pointed to, I pointed to here, right? Like, I don't know, right around here somewhere. And so it took her like a minute. She said, well, you're not to do that again. And I said, do what? I don't ever want to see you climbing up anything. You're not climbing up this banister ever again. Go to your room.
Wow.
Okay.
And you
Now,
didn't
I
even
knew I was in trouble.
Did she try to even understand? I mean, not understand, but explain to you what physically and emotionally was taking? Wow, she just said, "Don't." Yeah, okay.
No explanation as to what it was. No, nothing as to what it was. All I knew was suddenly making my tummy feel good was bad. And so I started to do it in secret.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime I had to go downstairs for something, my mother would be, what are you doing down there? You better not be climbing that pole, climbing the, and it just became a shameful secret that I did. And I don't even really know when I knew what it was. Like I can't, and I still didn't know, I'm going to say it, folks, I still didn't know what a clitoris was or a clitoris. I still didn't know I had one. It's not like I didn't even put a mirror down there till I was freaking probably 19 or 20. And so I didn't know what was going on down there. I had no idea. I thought it had something to do with my stomach or my vulva or whatever I didn't know. I didn't know it. I was actually a little tiny thing there that was causing that. Right. So I used, I used a fridge. I used closet doors. I used lots of things.
Okay.
Like I know. Well, this is when I'm in a house with no banisters. Right. What do you do when you go visiting and nobody's got an upstairs or a downstairs? You frickin' go to a closet door. But in all honesty, it's the only way I knew how to feel that feeling. Mm-hmm. And that carried with me, that shame and embarrassment carried with me all my life. And I didn't tell anybody about it. But that day when I wrote it down in that circle, and as I was writing it, I felt both shame, but I also felt a little giggle because I went, huh, that's pretty funny.
Right.
Now that I know how,
well, we're told not to do things. And it just, especially without a good reason or a good explanation as to why not to do something, it makes us want to do it more.
Well, yeah. Yes, it does. And that was the thing. I wanted to do it more. A, because it felt good, but B, because I wasn't supposed to be doing it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah.
Defiance of the parents.
Defiance of the parents. Mm-hmm. And I really, like I said, I don't really know when I knew that it was a sexual thing. I'm sure by the time I got 15, 16, because, I got involved with boys then, but on a very low scale, like I was telling you earlier, very low scale boys. I didn't even, I wasn't promiscuous until I was in my 20s. And then I made up for a lot of time, but that's another show. Yeah. But yeah, that shame around there still was. And then even telling the people within my hilarity group the story and having to bust down again my own shame around, can I even share this story? And then sharing it and then trying to find humor in it and trying to make it relatable, and then realizing that this is a really important topic. Like our leader Lizzie Allen said, well, why do you want to tell this story? And I said, because it's sexual shame. And as soon as I labeled it, I realized that's exactly what it was. Because even when I was writing it, I didn't quite put sexual shame together because I never thought I had sexual shame. Mm-hmm. But of course, telling the story, I realized, oh my God, I did have sexual shame around it. And I need to start talking about it. We need to start talking about this because there are so many young people out there and older people like us who are walking around with this. And if we can somehow reach those children, like if somebody had told me, if my mother, who was an alcoholic, if my mother had sat me down and said, okay, Siobhan, let's talk about what's going on with your body and what's actually happening there. And I can, not that my mother, I can show you some safe ways. Okay, Mom, let's go. But,
But she had her own sexual shame. So she was just casting that onto you. And that, and that's where, again, these conversations need to be had so that it's whether we want to say empower, the word is empower, But again, you know, where does it even start? Where does it even come from? Where did your mom even have that infiltrated within her own being to be ashamed of herself? I mean, because I know, you see the saying is when they're so aberrant against you doing something, it's because they're dealing it with their own selves.
Yeah.
And it's like, your mama was probably masturbating. Well, and I can't say that she was or wasn't, but I would assume probably, and she felt her own shame, and where her shame was perpetuated from, what adults were infiltrating the shame onto her, and again, where's the root cause? Where is it coming from?
Well, of course, it's coming from her past. My God. Now, I know, Stephanie, you're in the States, so you're probably not familiar with all of Canada and the geography, but my mother was a Newfoundlander, and her parents and grandparents, like, they came from the generation of, my mother was born in 1935. So, when this was happening to me, she was in her early 40s already. Yeah, she would have been in early 40s, late 30s even.
Okay.
And Newfoundland, my grandparents and my great grandparents all lived together in a house, and I know where it comes from because my grandparents were freaking lunatics. Like, honestly, insanity, I really firmly believe, some mild form of insanity, probably depression, anxiety, all those mental health terms that we use today that were never used in the 70s and 80s and the 60s.
To have mental, it was a shame to be depressed. It was a shame.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. My mother was an active, raging alcoholic. She never found recovery. She took tranquilizers. They were called tranquilizers back then. And they're antidepressants now, but they're called tranquilizers back then. So there was problems in her life for sure. And with my grandparents, I remember being a child going to visit my grandparents with my great grandparents and then my parents. So there's 3 generations there. And it was nuts, the shame and the dysfunction that was going on. So I know my mother was an innocent victim of her own upbringing. Yeah. But it's still perpetuated into both of her daughters carrying shame around and continuing that cycle.
Well, I have my own my own story of masturbation being a natural part of what it is that I was doing. When I've been masturbating to orgasm since I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And I remember the exact situation. I had a very mature hippocampus, so I can remember detailed events even as young as 1 year old. 1 year old. But anyway, I remember we were at my grandparents and we were watching, it was at night, we were watching a Western. And I don't know back like in the mid 70s if they actually showed couples in bed, but I remember it was a blonde woman and a dark-headed man, and whether they actually were in bed making out and kissing, or I imagine them getting into bed. That's where I'm unclear. But I remember going to bed that night and with my covers, rocking I was turned on by what I was viewing or what I was conjuring up in my mind of that couple. And I remember going to bed that night and with my covers between my legs and masturbating and getting myself off. And, I grew up in a fundamentalist, Southern Baptist Christian home, mama and daddy. It was shoved. It was literally shoved down my throat and my brother's, the concept of virginity until marriage. Sex outside of the confines of marriage is a sin. It's dirty. It's shame. Yeah. And while I was masturbating because I felt that sense of sexuality, even that young. Oh, wow. And I've never been sexually molested. I've never been sexually abused by like an elder or, anything like that. But it's like that was natural. And how young does that sexuality, actually become natural for us? And, I was like, I just remember feeling shamed because of the environment in which I grew up in, and hearing my parents always talk about, they didn't know. I never told them about my masturbating. But every night when I went to bed, I would think of that couple, and that's what I masturbated to every single night. But then I would tell myself, again, because of the shame I was being made to feel around sex in general, just because being at church, Sunday school, worship service. I mean, it just was such a constant. It was like the biggest, most worst thing you could do was possess this sense of sexuality and share that sexuality with with someone. And I just remember telling myself, okay, well, I'll stop when I become 12. Why 12? I don't know. And then it was like, okay, I'll stop when I get baptized. And then it didn't stop. And okay, I'll stop when I lose my virginity, because I lost my virginity when I was 14.
Yeah.
My parents were always, trying. Again, when you're parents, it's like, well, was it a defiance towards the parents, or was it just the natural? Because I couldn't wait to have sex. I couldn't wait to share, to do that. And it was like, where does that? So I kept telling myself, okay, I'll do, I'll stop like when I get my first boyfriend, and I never would stop. I would hit those marker miles, whatever, and I wouldn't stop. And then out of nowhere, in my, I'd say mid to late teens, I realized there is nothing wrong with masturbation. It is natural. There's nothing to feel shame. And I wouldn't say that I didn't ever feel that shame again, that sense of because it's like when it's just so rooted in your subconscious. But I will say that just that concept of sex being a shame, of anything outside of the confines of marriage, of a union. Now, my mom and daddy were virgins on their wedding night, and and great for them. That's great, but that wasn't my path. And, I started to, I've always had questions. Again, the whole sex thing never made sense, but I never actually, I was in church. We were in church. Sunday morning for Sunday school, every Sunday evening, every other Wednesday. I was a part of the youth group, the ACT teams, GAs, RAs. And I wouldn't trade any of that for the world. I'm glad that I didn't have that experience. That was a very communal experience for myself. But it's like, I always questioned certain things that I was taught, within, around that realm of religion. And, but I want to hear more about, more about your transition. Before I share I want to hear more about your transition away from, holy shit, there's no shame.
Oh, it's so funny you're talking, and I'm thinking about all these different things that have come up, and I'll share two stories with you, and one that I didn't remember till you were talking about being 3 years old. I can remember this is when we were going to the Pentecostal church, and we would go to a family. It was a husband and wife, a daughter and a son. The son was 7 years old, and we would go to their house for lunch. And I can remember, and I was probably about a couple years older than this kid. He was 7 or 8, and he was on the floor of the living room, grinding the living room floor, and his mother was, I forget the kid's name. Johnny, you get up off that floor again. Stop doing that. So then he just moved like behind her and did it, and she kept, and I said, what's he doing? Oh, you don't need to know. Okay.
That's great. What his mother told you when you asked.
Yeah. So that was one thing. Again, that's another thing that kid, there's shame right there, because kids don't know. Exactly. But the other thing was natural. The other thing, and the other thing is about education, was the fact that I didn't even know I could use my hand. And again, because I had no idea really what I was doing, and even in school they don't really explain it. But I used, if I had a phone, I would have used the phone. I was using, well, everybody used a cucumber, I'm sure. But I used, but I never inserted anything into me. It was always that but I didn't know I could use my hands until I was 18 years old. And I thought, and it's only because I felt like I was getting too old to be climbing things, because now I started at 11 and I'm 18. That's 7 years of some good climbing. I got some good arm muscles from that. But I realized there's got to be another way. And again, having no one to ask.
Right.
And, I don't think I had it. And we didn't have the internet. God, we didn't have Google.
I did talk about this with my friends, with my girlfriends and stuff, because we were always obsessed with it, because it was such an obsession towards us to stay away from it. It was always an obsession for us to be in that energy, to talk about that energy. I mean, it was like I was obsessed with sex, and that is carried out through my life. I've been on the path to research, sex and sexuality.
Yes.
And numerous books, like I shared with you the other day, this book, Dr. Tatiana's
Yes.
Advice to All of Creation.
Yeah.
That is one of the best books. I mean, Olivia Judson, PhD, and she literally, goes into grave detail. And so this is another thing I wanted to talk about was, again, where is it rooted? Where does the if it weren't for sex, we wouldn't be here. So I really think in my personal experience and what I've seen and talked to with others who kind of grew up similarly, is that organized religion is the culprit of perpetuating that shame. And, starting with the story of Adam and Eve and being in the garden and then realizing they were naked, and all of a sudden they were shamed.
Right.
And, so I think that's where it starts with that story. But it's like, in my mid-20s, I started dating this guy. And he had this personality like Adam Sandler, and he was a wicked genius. He was hilarious. And he was hilarious. I mean, he was just hilarious. Obviously, he's like had a personality like Adam Sandler. And we had English class and humanities class, and we started dating. And about, and I'm not going to go into explicit detail about the first time we ever had sex. You'll have to read that story in my autobiography, which will be coming out next week. But not next week, next year. Not next week, guys. Sorry. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. No, next year, 2021. But, I'm not going to say his name, but I almost did. So we're dating. And, about, I don't know, a couple weeks into our seeing one another, we had our first sexual encounter, etc. And needless to say, it was awesome, Well, so we were dating for a few months, I think 2 or 3 months at this point in time, when he invites me to go home with him to meet his parents up in New York, Binghamton, New York. And so in the midst of our relationship, he had shared a lot with me about his past. He was raped, sexually molested by a deacon in his church. They also were equally religious, but they were like Presbyterian or Methodist.
All right.
And he ran away from home. Juvenile delinquent. He had gotten in trouble, quite often. He had allowed a homeless man to suck his dick for money. In one story, he was in the military in his late teens, early 20s, and him and his buddies, they would go down to Myrtle Beach, rent houses, and they would take girls back. And there was no rape involved, but they would have what was called jerk-off parties, where girls would dance on the table and the guys would just circle jerk. And, amidst all these conversations, I never judged. I just listened. And that's one thing that I really admire, as I've never been really a judgmental person, because I know we have our own realities and our own lives. Well, he takes me home to Binghamton, New York. And when we're leaving to come back, and actually I was living with him temporarily at this time for 1 month, because my friend Brad and we had lived in a home together with other roommates, and that got sold out from under us. And we were about to move into a penthouse suite condominium on the ocean, but his cousin was moving out. But there was a month in between where we were moving from this house and into this condo. So I was living with this guy temporarily. So all my shit's at his apartment. Anyway, we go home to Binghamton to meet his family, and again, equally as religious. And we were sleeping in separate bedrooms, of course, as we would have if we were staying at my parents' home. And that's respectful. I get it. But when we're driving back to Myrtle Beach, it's like 12-hour drive. We took my car, and he's driving, and he decides to just ask me how many people I had been with sexually, like intercourse specifically. And because amidst all the other conversations we had ever had, and certainly with what he had shared with me, I was like, well, this guy, but I still somewhere instinctively, intuitively, something told me to kind of lie. So I made up, Siobhan, what I would consider a very low number. And when I told him the number, and I'm not going to tell anybody the number here, you're going to have to read my autobiography. Again, I considered it a very low number, being 27 years old. This guy, out of nowhere, it's like he became demonically possessed.
And you did tell me the number in a previous conversation, and I'll just tell the viewers that it's a good number. It's a low number, like nothing to freak out. I just want to clarify, because you were not going to give the number, and I respect that, but I know the number, and I'm concurring that she's telling the truth. Like it was a very calm number for a woman in her 20s. Calm.
Yeah, exact. Thank you. So, but anyway, again, he becomes demonically possessed, and he wants to kill us. He's like, all of a sudden, he's like, I want to die. I want to die. Sex is a sin. We shouldn't be having sex anyway. I'm living with this guy, and I got another couple weeks before I'm moving into this condo. So I'm like, and I'm like, and he starts driving my car like over 100 miles an hour. His foot's pressed all the way to the floor. He's like, I want to die. I want to die. Sex is a sin. You're a sinner. You're a fucking whore. I mean, he just starts screaming. Oh my God, I can't believe. I thought you would only go with like maybe 2 people. I mean, he was freaking out. And it's all I could do to calm him down. Please stop. Please let me drive. Please let me drive. I mean, I think if I had been honest with him, well, obviously we got back. We got back safe. Here I am. But I think if I had been honest with him about the real number, I think he would have slammed us into a fucking wall immediately. It took several hours of him we didn't get pulled, of him weaving. I mean, just screaming, I want to die. I want to die. Sex is a sin. And we, and I, obviously calmed him down, but we get back. And he's like, we're never having sex again until we get married. I've been dating this guy like 3 months. I had 2 more years left of college, before I graduated. And I was like, number one, I'm not getting married until I graduate college. Number two, who says I'm even going to marry you? We haven't even saying I love you at this point. I said, and number three, if you deny me sex now, you will shut that down. You'll be lucky if I ever even want to have sex with you again, 3 years from now, if we were to get married. So we get back. But what that did for me, Siobhan, is one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life, is it sent me, because I had been taught all my life that sex was a sin. And it was only supposed to happen within the confines of marriage, and like a missionary, no more than maybe a woman on top type of way, just shame, shame, shame. It sent me, I loved going to Barnes & Noble back then. God, I still love going to Barnes & Noble. It's one of my favorite places to be. I'm a seeker of knowledge, always have been. And I took it upon myself during the day when I wasn't, in school, etc. Actually, when I wasn't in school, because we were out of school. It was July, so we were out of school, but I still was there. And so I would go out during the day. I'd go to the gym, etc. And I'd go to Barnes & Noble. And what I wound up doing is I took a Bible off of the shelf. And I also this book, From A to Z, Where to Find It in the Bible. Any subject whatsoever that you could ever possibly have a question about, and any verse from Genesis all the way to Revelation that has anything to do with said subject. And of course, my subject was sex. I was looking for where in the Bible, because I had never read it. I'd never really actually read the Bible. I mean, most people don't. I mean, I'd read the books of the Bible, memorized the books of the Bible in Sunday school, and been directed to certain passages, times and church. But actually sitting down and just reading and researching the Bible, I'd never done. And every verse from Genesis to Revelation, and what I found in my research, Siobhan, was women were nothing but property of either their fathers or other men, or they were whores. I couldn't believe all the verses depicting men sleeping with prostitutes. Prostitution is, I'm like, what? There's just so much sex. And not only did I found one verse that said something about abstaining from sex outside of marriage, and something that alluded to being, a virgin, male and female. But men were sleeping with horses. And this is the catalyst. I'd been going to Barnes and Noble for several days and just reading. And then the last passage I read was in Deuteronomy.
Mm-hmm.
Where Deuteronomy 22, and it starts talking about a man and a woman committing adultery against another man's wife. They're supposed to be taken out and stoned in public.
Yeah.
Then it talks about, the next verse is like a man sleeping with a woman, basically raping her. Nothing's to happen to her because she didn't scream, and nobody knew if she screamed or not, but to stone him in public. And literally, this is the next verse was, and this was the Bible that I pulled off the shelf. If a man seizes a woman and lies with her, and I'm repeating it verbatim as I just read it, and lies with her, he is to pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He is to marry her, and he is not allowed to divorce her all his days.
Oh my God.
I pushed the Bible across the table. I went, you got to be fucking kidding me with this shit.
Yeah.
I'm getting cold chills. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, this is not God. This is man.
Yes.
And in that moment of pure shock, after everything else I had read that depicting women as nothing but property, I realized that everything I had been taught all my life was a lie.
Mm.
But here's the thing. Oh, I love your kitty. Not only, it's like in that moment of pure shock, the next moment is this sense of freedom.
Yeah.
The freedom that came from the realization that what I'd been taught all my life, that what I have been shackled by and enslaved in an effort to control me and put me in a state of fear of going to hell, or keeping me in that state of perpetual shame, was gone.
Oh, yeah.
And Siobhan, it's never returned.
That is so good.
And what that also enabled me and exposed me now to, there's no going back. There's no going back into that, or justifying or rationalizing, going back into that mindset of feeling shamed about sex and sexuality. Yeah, certainly rape and touching little kids.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
Or having sex with animals.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when you wake up and realize, it's like, and what that again enabled for my life, it was one of the best things that's ever happened for me.
Well, and I wish I had discovered that years ago, because really, when I uncovered my bus stop story, I thought, well, how can I even really talk about this? Because it was fun in the environment of the safety of being with the hilarity people and working, but then when it actually came to even talking about it, like you and I had the conversation, are you wanting to talk about it? And and first I was like, I can't really talk about it outside of the context of a stand-up. Like that was my first thinking of it. And then I thought, my God, Siobhan, if you're gonna make sexual shame a stand-up piece, you've got to also include where it came from, because otherwise it's just going to be a piece of fluffy comedy, and it's not fluffy comedy. It's comedy that comes from a belief that I had, a shameful belief that I had about my body and about sex. And, you know, I can remember now in my grandparents, I told you that my grandparents lived with their great grandparents and in Newfoundland back in the day. And they had a huge kitchen, and they actually had a bed in the kitchen. It was this huge kitchen and in Cape Breton, and there was a bed in the kitchen. My mother had always told me that, you know, you're not going to have sex before you're married. You're not going to have sex before you were married. And then and this was when I was really young, but I can remember going to my grandparents' house, and this now I'm in my teens, and I'm with my mother, and she's having a few drinks one night, and she confesses that she lost her virginity with my father on that bed in the kitchen before they were married. And I was shocked because my mother had always told me that this, you know, the alcohol gets the mouth going. She had always told me growing up not to have sex before I was married. You know, she didn't have sex before she was married. She was a good girl, good Protestant, Anglican Protestant girl. But when she confessed that, it was, I felt betrayed. Like, how can you tout this as being a rule that you lived by when you lied? So there's that shame, right? Because she was probably ashamed of the fact that she had lost her virginity before. But there's no shame in that. There's no shame in losing your virginity. And of course, like Stephanie said, taking out all the other, you know, we're not talking about sexual abuse and rape and that's a whole different conversation. We're talking about healthy experiences that should have been healthy, that there's nothing wrong with, that have been made to be shameful.
Speaking of that, what we were just talking about, like, you know, rape. So that was the Bible that I pulled off that shelf, but my children's Bible, which I still have, which I think it's over there, the word is actually rape. If a man rapes a woman, you know, who's unbetrothed, who's unmarried, unbetrothed is, you know, engaged, he is to pay a fine to her father, but, you know, and marry her, and he can't divorce her. But up above, even before that, I most recently discovered the verses that depict when a man, you know, takes his virgin wife, and if he finds out that if he accuses her of not being a virgin, and indeed she is, and her parents take to the courthouse the sheets with the blood, you know, and it shows he lied, he's to be whipped. And then in the next verse it says, however, if it is proven that she is indeed, you know, not a virgin, and she committed sin, you know, with another man, she's to be taken to her father's steps and stoned, and they have to pay it. And that man, and I'm sorry, wait, I back up. The guy who gets whipped because he lied, he has to pay her father 50 shekels, 100 shekels of silver, 100 shekels of silver. But the penalty for raping a woman, taking her against her will, later on in Deuteronomy, is 50 shekels of silver. So it's more of a sin and a higher payable fine to lie than it is to actually rape and take something from someone.
And I was just sitting here thinking, like, and again, please, don't, as Judge Judy would say, don't write me letters about your religion. But I just want to say, like, I really, what I want to say is, like, God, isn't the Bible so old now? Like, that thinking is, who's believing in that? But I know and God, I know, my people who believe in religion, you know, I'm sorry if I'm offending you, not sorry. I have a big belief in God and a higher power. I do not believe in organized religion. I'll just put that out there right now. So for me, that thinking is so backwards. And I want to say, haven't we come so far? And in a lot of ways we have, but in a lot of ways we have not.
Right, because they're still using verses that depict gay marriage is a sin because of it being an abomination in a few verses in the Bible. And that's my point of bringing the Bible up, is that if you're going to use the Bible to justify your aberrant attitude against gay marriage and it being an abomination, then how is you can't use the Bible in one area and then not, but we did away with slavery. I mean, don't even get me started about all the verses that are in slavery. You know, and it's like, women are just nothing but property, and clearly women aren't property. But in the New Testament, it's saying, I don't usurp a woman to ever have authority over a man. A woman's to learn in silence. She's never to teach. But now a woman can be president. So clearly we've moved away. We've evolved. I say, in spite of religion, we've evolved.
Yes.
So your question is right on. Why use it at all? At all to prove any point?
Yeah. Well, it's because we have come so far, and
Exactly.
there's people fight for so many things, right? Women's rights and the whole Black Lives Matter. Again, don't write in. There's so many right, and I know that there's protests and stuff but I don't think enough people are talking about the everyday woman and man who suffers from shame about such a natural part of life. Yeah, and I mean that's why I'm so thrilled that we're having this conversation, and that and if you had told me 3 months ago that this would be a topic that I would be talking about in my life and so openly, I would have been, not me. That's embarrassing. I can't talk about that. That's too embarrassing.
Right.
And it's like, but that's the whole point.
And I was experiencing, some fear, like, oh my God, this is huge. But I know it's necessary, like you say, it's necessary to be talking about so we can, persevere through that. And at the end of the day, it's about empowered and healthy sexuality. Instead of teaching abstinence, teach understanding of the body. Help children who are growing into adolescence understand what's about to happen and what the repercussions are. Like say teenage pregnancy or venereal diseases. And so they make an educated decision based on thought, real well thought out.
Yeah.
And again, being educated. And, it leads me into, one of the topics we were also discussing is why women are more so shamed than men. Why men are given this, like, go out, like the more you're more of a man, the more ass that you get, the more women that you bed, the more women that you sleep with. And then women are like, we especially, and I know we are evolving. We have definitely evolved, in the direction away from that, but it still exists because people were slut shaming Kamala Harris. But it's like Joe, I've heard so many men say Joe and his hoe, and it's like, wait a minute, Donald Trump has cheated on every woman he's ever been with. Joe Biden himself, slept, his wife he took from another man, and I've seen people, allude to that, but they're not shaming them. They're not calling them, but they're shaming Kamala for so she also was sleeping with a man who was married, but then there's this other story that he actually had been separated from his wife for a while. It wasn't like he was ultimately disrespecting her, but yet calling her a whore, calling her a hoe. And it's like, that attitude still is perpetuated in our society, and that is so unhealthy. And it's talked about in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Bateman, Dr. Bateman did a study, and it was on the Drosophila fruit fly. Okay. And in the first part of his study, he notices the mating patterns of the male and female fruit flies. And because the males were mating with various females, and the females, after mating with one male, would ward off other suitors. Oh, yep, it's scientific proof. Women just want one guy, or females just want one male, and males just want the more, when in actuality, the more a man, ejaculates in a single session, that, he starts shooting blanks. But it's like, but had he continued the study a little bit longer, he would have, as other scientists have, he would have actually noticed the complete opposite, that the fertilization of the female fruit fly had a greater chance the more she wound up mating with other males. But for whatever reason, at the initial mating with one male fruit fly, she didn't want, but then she went, for lack of a better word, into a fuck frenzy with other male fruit flies. So it's like, they like to say it's biological evidence, but it's based on incomplete and bad science.
Yes.
To try to cast that on women and slut shame us for being lustful and sexual.
Well, you can skew that, you can skew that experiment any way you want. And, I think the drum we're beating is the same drum that a lot of people are beating on a bigger scale. But now we can actually, you and I in our own little world, can start affecting people in our world, right? Like right now, you and I, you have your whole following and your whole world. You're in South Carolina, North Carolina.
I might have lost some followers, but then again, I might have gained some too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're going to gain some for sure, lady. Me too. And so even in the scope of both our worlds, that through this conversation that we've just had today, we have affected at least one person. And I know we have, and I don't know who that one person is, and it doesn't matter who that one person is, but out of this whole discussion, I know something we've said has rung through somewhere. So for me in my world, I could get out there and I could try to, rah, listen to me. But I think that we're going to be heard authentically just like this, by telling our stories, being real, like being real people, and opening it up and just using the right language, like pee pee poo poo, like, oh, you're pee pee, and oh, my vajayjay, and yeah, that's funny. Vajayjay is funny, but using even to the terms, right? There's shame around saying vagina and penis. Say it with me now. Vagina. Penis. But people don't even want to use those words. And, even if we could
screaming today, vagina. Penis.
Penis. Yeah. Well, even people.
I gotta tell a funny story. Like when guys are like, when you're out and about and every once in a while, you're show me your tits. I always give them the opposite reaction. I go, show me your penis.
Well, this is actually bringing back another story. Okay, this is like fresh off the presses. I've never even talked about this story before. So Stephanie, you're getting an exclusive here. So years ago, again, when I was a kid, and I never told anybody this, but I remember writing my mother a note and telling her this had happened, and her never responding to it. So again, probably a young girl, not a teenager yet. Definitely not a teenager yet, but the boys, there was like 4 boys on our street and about, 4 or 5 girls on the street, and they would gather the girls around and take us into the woods to expose ourselves. Now, I was afraid, my friend and I were both afraid that we would get beat up if we didn't do this. Now, they weren't going to beat us up because they always let us run away, but we always went. And they would stand in a line. This is them, this is us. And we would say 1, 2, 3, and they would pull down their pants, and we would pull down our pants. Now, I've not told this story in a really long time.
And how old were you then?
I wasn't a teenager yet, so probably in the bus climbing days, bus stop climbing days. But we would go back there and we would be scared, but we would do it, right? Pull down our pants. Let's look at what the boys have. Let's look at what the girls have. And then we'd do that a couple times, and they'd ask us to lift our tops, and we'd lift our tops. And then we'd say, we got to go. And we girls would run off and go, oh my God. I never told our parents. Never told our parents because it was embarrassing. It was shameful. It was shameful because we weren't necessarily afraid. But how dare we go into the woods and have these boys pull down their pants? Like, how dare I be curious about what a penis looks like?
Right.
Or them about what a vagina looks like. And, I never told anybody because I was afraid I would get in trouble.
Right.
Which, I mean, really, I probably would. You go and you say, oh, yeah, Ken and Steve and John, and, I'm making up all these names, Maria, Elaine, and I are going back in the woods and we're exposing ourselves. Probably not the best thing, but you know what? There's still shame involved around that, right? We're just... And maybe had I shared that, again, had I had a functioning parent, maybe they would have gone, okay, well, let's sit down and let's talk about this. If you're curious about what a penis is, I can remember my father. Oh my God, my mother and father, they used to sleep naked together, and I can remember this. So this is when my father still lived with us. So I was definitely about under 11 years old, and I was choking on oatmeal. And my father came running out of the bedroom, stark naked. My choking stopped immediately because all of a sudden there was a big hanging penis and balls right there in front of me, and they were my father's. And he runs out and he stops, and it's kind of like swinging. And my sister and I look at each other. I'm not joking anymore. I'm staring at what the hell is between his.
God.
But do you think we even talked about that?
Right. Wow.
Wasn't even mentioned. Wow. Wasn't even mentioned. Didn't know what it was. Didn't have any idea. Just, he's different. Oh. Yeah. So it's amazing what ignorance, and I really hope that's changed, because we're talking about the 70s, and I don't know now because I don't have children. So I don't know how that culture of sex education has changed, but I am betting that if you are a mom or a dad with your own sexual shame, I am betting that perhaps your children are are missing out on some vital sex education topics and talks, which could probably really help children. You help your children, like really. Again, I can't speak because I'm not a parent, but if you're a parent and you have sexual shame around something, then maybe look at how that might be of a disservice to your own children, and help break that cycle. I really would like to see a cycle being broken of where it's okay to have these sex stories. It's okay to have your masturbation stories. It's okay to masturbate. It's okay to have toys. It's okay to use different household objects.
I don't know if you would have been privy to this in Canada, maybe so, but I remember it being suggested back in the 90s that they, as part of sex education in schools, that they teach masturbation in an effort to stop unwanted pregnancies and venereal diseases.
Yeah.
I remember the religious people going, no, now we're teaching them to have sex. We're promoting sex. And it's like, no. But it's like if my parents, instead of just saying no, and we did have a birds and bees conversation, meaning I knew where babies came from, and between a man and a woman, but instead of like just saying no, don't do this, and rather explaining what happens if you make the choice, then I think, again, okay, so I was reading a book, and in the book they were talking about they were using the example of trains. If you tell a child that trains are bad, don't ever look at a train. If ever you come up on a train when you're with the child, you're like, oh, trains, and you're covering them and protecting them from the train. Don't look at a train. The first thing that they're going to want to do when they're out of your observation, or out of your whatever, I can't think of the word. They're going to look for a train.
Of course they are.
They're going to be so curious about a train.
Well, of course they are. I was so curious about railings. I looked for more railings. Yeah, exactly. But I just want to touch on this thing that you said about, masturbation begets masturbation. I think that would go firmly into like a lifestyles course. Remember that, because they're saying like we need to. Nobody knows how to raise children. Nobody knows how to budget. And I was just thinking when you said masturbation will foster more masturbation, like that's like saying like I'm going to teach you how to do a budget and watch out because you're going to start to really want to budget more and more and more. Like if I teach you this skill, you're not going to be able to stop budgeting because you're going to want to budget all over the place. Like it's just kind of ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I think that part of that was also passing out condoms in schools, and again, them being so aberrant against that idea, like, oh, you're promoting sex, you're promoting, the promiscuity, and it's like, no, we're just giving them, because it is natural, to desire sex and to want to have that experience with someone, that it's and again, I don't have children either, but I can just imagine based upon my own experience and growing up with people who had the same experience or similar experiences of what we were, taught, that it would probably drastically reduce because you would feel a sense of empowerment about making a better decision, not the right decision, not the wrong decision, but about making a better decision for yourself. And, and that's, I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about what another thing, another concept that I really feel should be implemented into every curriculum of school around the world is that around the entire world is a curriculum not only of spelling and arithmetic and PE and lunch and nap time, but a curriculum around the concept of self-awareness.
Yes.
And personal growth and balancing a checkbook and like all about the life skills about literally operating. So, because don't you think, Siobhan, that if a child went to school, regardless of the bullshit that they see when they're at home, regardless of how horrific and or whatever is going on at home, but they're at school and they're realizing their worth and value as a human being because they are here, that would enable so many more people or promote so many more kids to grow into adults who are self-aware and taking personal responsibility for their lives, and through them making the conscious choice to make a better decision for themselves, and lack of a bunch of adult, people growing into adults who just, and
of course, yeah. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah. Oh my God, we're already in an hour. But,
yes, we are.
But this has been fucking awesome.
It has been. It has. I can't believe it's an hour. Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a great conversation.
It has been phenomenal. So well, guys, thank you all for joining me and Siobhan today. This has been certainly. If anybody wants to, talk outside of this conversation in a private manner, Siobhan and I are here. We're open and ready and willing.
Yes.
To tell them how they can find you, I want tell them about Hilarity.
Yes.
And we're going to be posting these links as well.
Yes, and I will. I'll send you the link if anybody wants to catch my stand-up set. Hilarity is doing an online comedy show this Saturday. It's going to be 1 p.m. Pacific time, so you're 3 hours ahead. So it'll be 4 p.m. your time. I'll put a link. There's a link to Zoom. You'll get in the room. You'll watch us go. I'm performing my stand-up all around this bus stop incident. Yes, I have actually made it funny, because once you know, and that's what Hilarity is all about. Once you've dealt with your traumas, and you can put them in the past and you can see them for what they were, then there's some funny out of it. I made a whole stand-up set a year ago about growing up in an alcoholic home and my name and all the traumas that caused me such grief, bullying and the names I was called. I made a stand-up set about it because all that shit has just made me stronger, and all the shit in your past that you've healed from and all that shit can come back in a healing and growing manner and make it funny and heal the world through a little bit of shared laughter. That's what Hilarity is about. If you want to catch us on Saturday, there's stand up. We've got a lot in store for you. So I'll give you that link, Stephanie, to put in the comments as well. So
I am so doggone excited, and I've already purchased the ticket for that.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
So we're going to be posting the links for all of everything that Siobhan has mentioned. And again, thank you so much, Siobhan, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Today. We'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.